Hello, everyone. My name is Sandy. I'm not a wealthy woman, and while I haven't been mistreated by my mother in law, but I was mistreated by my own parents. This story is about my useless husband, Thomas, and how my parents supported him more than they ever supported me. I've never shared this with anyone before because I don't have many people in my life. I met Thomas about 6 years ago on a dating website. He had a decent job and seemed like a good guy. Thomas wasn't a knight in shining armor, but he was definitely a good boyfriend. We had some great years together at the start of our relationship. We dated for 4 years and then got married. He was a great partner to me and quickly became my parents' favorite. However, I started to feel some resentment toward him because of that. At every family dinner, my parents would say things like, "We're so happy to have you in our family, Thomas. Sandy finally made a good choice in life by bringing you to us." God really answered our prayers and gave us what we wanted. You know, we always wanted a son, but never had one. You're such a nice young man and perfect for our family. Yes, Sandy is okay and all, but she can't be our son. She doesn't understand that Sandy has always been a little selfish and greedy for attention. We're glad you stuck with her despite her flaws. They were right. I was selfish and greedy for affection. My parents always wanted a son but couldn't have one. They even tried for a bit after having me, but it wasn't possible, which made them resent me throughout my life. When I was young, I couldn't understand why they neglected me and favored other children, especially if they were boys. They always complained about me and how they missed out on having a son. As I grew up, I was determined to prove to them that I could be just as good as a son. I got great grades, went to college, and secured a good job. I even sent them monthly allowances so they wouldn't have to work anymore, yet they never appreciated me. Thomas did nothing for them, but they loved him more than me. I tried to push aside my resentment because I was happy that my parents finally approved of one choice I made. Thomas also enjoyed the attention he got from my parents. His own parents had disowned him, and I didn't know why. None of his relatives even came to our wedding. Slowly, I started to understand why almost everyone in his life cut him off. He was a thief. I wish I were exaggerating, but I'm not. At first, it started with him being lazy. One day, he suddenly took a lower-paying job because he didn't want to work long hours anymore. He said it was to avoid getting depressed. So I decided to switch jobs at my company and took a lower position with a pay cut to help out. "Why would you do that, Thomas? This is a serious pay cut, and it will affect our life," I said. "Why would it affect us? You earn well enough to support our lifestyle. Just put more money into our joint account. That would solve everything," he replied. "You can't just assume that, Thomas. Things like this require a family discussion. If you want more money from me, you should have discussed it with me first. Do you have no regard for my mental health? Why would I even discuss this with you? We're married, so there's no my money or your money anymore. Stop being so dramatic," Thomas said. I was a bit annoyed by how casually he was acting about the whole situation, and the fact that he refused to separate our finances worried me. But I still supported him because I loved him. That was one of the biggest mistakes I ever made. This man spent all his money and time on video games. Yes, whatever little money he earned was spent on them. He put $500 into our joint account, but later he took out even more for himself. Thomas and I had countless arguments about this in the past. He was draining my savings and taking almost all of my paychecks. Sometimes he didn't even contribute anything to the household. He didn't help with chores either. All he did was work, play games, and spend money on things he wanted. I was getting sick and tired of being financially taken advantage of. No amount of talking ever helped. Instead, he always turned things around on me and yelled at me. My parents also took his side. They said, "Sandy, why is your husband calling us saying that you are financially abusing him? This is very unlike you, Sandy. You better explain yourself." "Dad, I'm not financially abusing him. In fact, it's the opposite. He's been draining my savings and making me pay for 90% of our household expenses." So what, Sandy? People need to spend money on their family after marriage. It's shameful how you don't let Thomas use your credit card. You're punishing him for not having a fancy job like you. How did you become so greedy? Mom, he's misused my credit cards before. That's why I don't let him use them anymore. I can't risk our future knowing he has no control over his spending. But my parents still took Thomas's side, which made me even angrier. I knew he was using my parents to make me give him all my money. Little by little, all the love I had for him faded away. But one day, things reached a breaking point. I discovered that he had taken $20,000 from my personal account without permission. And what did he spend it on? A new gaming PC and accessories. I was furious. I tried to get the charges canceled, but it didn't work, so as a last resort, I decided to report it to the police. Thomas was livid when they came to arrest him that day. I was determined that my marriage had to end. I needed to get out. What I didn't realize was that I would lose more than just Thomas because of my decision. I texted my parents to tell them what happened. I didn't want them to hear about it from someone else, so I told them that night. They saw the messages but didn't reply. I was a little worried about their silence, but I was too exhausted to think about it, so I went to sleep. The next morning, I woke up and saw a text from Thomas. It read, "Hey wife, I'm already out of jail." Surprised? I am too. I never thought your parents would be the ones to bail me out. What? My parents bailed you out? That's impossible. They would never do that to me. You're wrong, Sandy. One call from me, and your parents were eager to help. They even cursed you out at the police station. I must say, they're very disappointed in you. Those words made my stomach churn. I couldn't believe my parents would do something like this. I rushed over to their house, desperate for answers. I had tried to keep them out of the situation, but somehow they had still managed to talk to Thomas and even paid for his bail. My anger grew as I thought about what they had done. I walked into my parents' house and said, "Mom, Dad, please don't tell me you bailed Thomas out. Don't tell me what I heard is true. I can't believe you would do something like this. Sandy, we raised you better than that. You're just punishing Thomas because he didn't listen to you after marriage. He has every right to use your credit card. All your money is his money too." "He did nothing wrong," my dad replied. "Dad, he stole from me. He took $20,000 from my accounts, and this was after he had already emptied our joint account in the past." "When does it stop?" I asked. "We know you've been financially controlling toward him, Sandy. It's not right to shame your own husband for spending money. You were a bad wife to him. Thomas told us how you refused to put more money into your joint account. Spouses shouldn't hide their money from each other. Thomas doesn't hide anything from you," Dad insisted. "Thomas didn't hide money because he had nothing to hide. After every paycheck, he had no money left. He barely contributed anything to our household expenses." "Oh my God, are you shaming a man for earning less than you? What can poor Thomas do when he earns so little?" "I can't believe what a greedy and selfish brat you've become," Dad said angrily. No matter what I said, my parents continued to support Thomas. I should have seen this coming. They always preferred him because he was a man. Thomas filled the gap in their hearts from not having a son. Having a good and successful daughter wasn't enough for them. Still, I thought they wouldn't choose any man over their own child. I was wrong. My parents were completely hopeless. Their words hurt deeply, and I was both disappointed and sad. But I wasn't prepared for what they said next. "Sandy, you have truly turned into a horrible woman. We're ashamed of what you've become. We can't be associated with such a selfish daughter like you. So your father and I have made some decisions. We've invited Thomas over to our house. He'll be staying with us until you come to your senses. We'll pay for his lawyer fees and everything. You'd better drop the case and take him back, or we'll disown you. You're going to house the man who stole from me and financially abused me for years? Are you really going to disown me over this? You can't be serious." "We are dead serious, Sandy. It's time we taught you a lesson. Just because you're financially independent doesn't mean you can do whatever you want. Thomas has been such a good son-in-law to us, and it's time we stand up for him and help him out in this tough time. He's already like a son to us, so we'll let him stay with us until you realize your mistake." Nothing could have prepared me for this. I knew my parents were biased toward my husband, but I never imagined they would disown me for him. They constantly praised my abusive, freeloading husband for his poor decisions and belittled me for being responsible. What they said that day completely shattered my heart. All the love I had for them vanished. I realized that I had been loving the wrong people all my life, but I wasn't going to let them take advantage of me anymore. So I said, fine, then have him in this house. But if he comes to live here, I will stop sending you money. I won't pay you a cent, so you can go and spend it on my loser husband. We expected that from you, Sandy. We already know what a selfish person you are. You don't have to send us money. We can take care of ourselves. It's just like you to threaten us with money. Listen to me, Sandy. You can't use your money to control us. The money you earn has made you proud, but we'll show you what a mistake you've made by using your money to manipulate people. There's no reason for us to stay in contact with you. Don't come to this house or talk to us again. I looked at my mother, and she agreed with my dad. Both of them told me to go away and never show my face again. They even said I shouldn't call or text them. I took their words to heart and left the house. I didn't cry in front of them, but I broke down in my car. I cried so much that I had to pull over to calm myself. I had spent over 30 years of my life trying to win my parents' love, and yet they threw me away like trash. They treated me like trash and called me trash. I felt like my world had ended that day. I went home and cried myself to sleep. The next day, Thomas called me just to brag about how he'd won over my parents. He was already settled into my old room and called to tell me how much my parents hated me and loved him more. He said, "Guess what, Sandy? I'm in your precious room right now. Your parents even came to pick me up. They really hate you right now." I replied, "Thomas, you're being rewarded for your crimes. It must be fun having loving parents who aren't even your own." He said, "It was so easy to manipulate them, Sandy. I didn't even have to try. You ran after them like a dog, but they never loved you like this. Honestly, I think they hated you all along. Poor little Sandy worked so hard to make her parents love her and still failed miserably." I couldn't take it anymore, so I hung up while he laughed at my misery. That horrible man even had the nerve to send me a picture of him lying on my old bed. I wanted to cry, but instead, I pulled myself together and made a plan. I was going to follow through with my promise of not sending my parents any more money. I knew that cutting off their allowance would hurt them, and I was sure Thomas would eventually show his true colors. So I stopped sending them money and waited. As I expected, just 2 days after the month ended, my parents started pestering me for money. They broke their own no contact rule and began asking, then demanding, that I send them money. "Why haven't you sent us money yet? Do you know how many bills we have?" they asked. I replied, "What money, Dad? I already told you I'm not sending you any more money. It's funny to see you contact me after you proudly told me to get out of your life." "Sandy, don't be rude. Things were said when we were all angry. It's been weeks since that incident. It's time to move on. Families don't hold grudges." "So now that you need money, you suddenly remember I'm family? Yesterday, Thomas seemed more like family to you. Why don't you ask him for money?" "That won't be possible, Sandy. He doesn't pay for anything. We paid his bail, his phone bill, and his food. He's still asking us for money." "Well, use your savings to feed him then. I'm sure you've saved some from the checks I used to give you." "We already dipped into our savings when we paid for Thomas's bail. We have very little left. We need you to send us money, Sandy. It's not fair for you to hold the past over us." "No, this is completely fair, Mom and Dad. For years, you treated me unfairly because I'm a girl. You chose Thomas and loved him only because he's a man. I tried so hard to be a good daughter, to win your affection, but you two just showed me how wrong I was. I should have done this a long time ago. I'm cutting you off. I don't need people like you in my life anymore." Years of hurt and betrayal poured out of me as I unloaded all my anger on them. My parents were silent while I spoke, and when I finished, they started pleading for forgiveness because they really needed my help. I hung up on them without listening any further. I had predicted that my parents would come banging on my door with apologies and pleas. I even expected some entitlement on their part. But my revenge became even sweeter because Thomas did something stupid that made my parents file a police report against him and kick him out. If you want to know why, you need to see the conversation I had with them. One day, they showed up at my doorstep to try and talk to me. I didn't open the door but spoke to them from inside. They said, "Sandy, you need to hear us out, dear. We're here to apologize for our mistakes. We never should have let an outsider into our home. You are family, and you should have been our priority. We got caught up in our dream of having a son and didn't realize how bad your husband was. We've already paid dearly for it. Thomas stole our credit cards and drained our savings. We don't even have money for food anymore. Sandy, please don't let your parents starve. We need your help. We promise we'll stand by you this time. We've already reported the theft to the police and kicked Thomas out. He'll never step foot in our lives again. I replied, "You should have thought about this when you happily chose Thomas over me. You're the only ones responsible for your situation now. I'll only send you money for this month, but after that, I'm done. You have a month to figure out what to do." I said that and left them on the porch. I felt a little bad for my parents, but then I remembered how little I meant to them, and that was enough to make me angry again. I did send them some money because I couldn't let them starve, but that was the last check I sent them. Just as they said, my parents filed a police report to reverse the charges on their credit cards. Surprisingly, they sent back the money I'd sent them last time. They kept begging and pleading with me for forgiveness. The begging went on for so long that I started to get used to it. I saw it coming, but didn't expect them to be so persistent. However, what they did next was even more unexpected. They actually signed over their house to me as an apology for all the mistakes they made against me. My parents showed up on my porch and left the papers there. I didn't know what to think. Apparently, they also got jobs so that I wouldn't have to spend my money on them anymore. I returned the papers and haven't contacted them yet. As for my husband, well, he's my ex-husband now. Yes, I filed for divorce and had him sent to prison for fraud. With a double case against him, Thomas's chances of avoiding jail were slim. Just as I predicted, the judge put him in prison.